Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, Steve Spagnuolo and Vic Fangio, Nick Sirianni, Andy Reid, Jalen Carter, and James Winchester. How does it all stack up? We're talking about it next with the Professor Deniz Selman, Zach Berman in studio on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Friday afternoon. Bo Wulf, Deniz Selman, Zach Berman here, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, and away we go. Professor, nice to see you. How you doing?
Good to see you. Doing well.
Hold on, let me just... We're supposed to have high energy to keep the people hooked on YouTube for the first 90 seconds. So, how the heck you doing, my man?
I'm doing awesome. Can't wait.
Zach, what's up?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. Final show before New Orleans. Always good to be with the professor. Get smarter when I'm with him. Got smarter on the drive in this morning, listening to you and Cheel. So excited for the show.
Professor, this has been a good season for you in so much as you have beaten the allegations that you were the reason that the team collapsed down the stretch last season.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I had a lot of trouble convincing people, just like on the street, like during the offseason.
People throwing tomatoes.
What a flex that is.
Yeah. I was like, the team was 10-1 when I started coming on the show, and then we know what happened after. So I understand.
I did have a little birdie inform me that you were a bit of a mini celebrity at the game the other day at the NFC Championship game.
Is that right?
People were recognizing you, saying they were fans.
Oh yeah, that happened. I mean, a lot of viewers of the show. Yeah, my favorite one, very drunk guy at halftime.
As opposed to the other.
Well, before the game, people are less so. So at halftime,
I didn't know that Zach left the press box.
I have I have run into Zach in the concourse. So he was running to see Mount Joy, and I was
yes.
I know Bo would get very upset at
journalistic
you
purposes,
if you missed
yes.
Mount Joy, right? It was halftime. I was coming back from the bathroom up to my seat,
The loo, as it were.
the loo, and it's not as fun as at the vet when we were like peeing in the sink and all that. Those were the days. But it's too easy now, like life's gotten too comfortable.
Trough, yeah.
Yeah, but on the way back to the seat, I always tweet the success rates and all that. So I'm doing that.
Okay.
And this guy sees me, and he's like, "Hey man, like I love you, man, like." He's like, I just love you on the show, and I love your stats. And I'm just like,
that's great.
Thanks, man. Like, I just tweeted some out, and he's like, I saw that. I couldn't believe it. Like, so yeah, stuff like that's a lot of fun for me.
Shout out to that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, if you remember that moment, thank you.
I mean, that sounds like a guy who's been around a drink before. He's
that's
okay.
true. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
All right. Let's get into it, Professor, because, next week we're going to be off at Radio Row in Nolans. We're hoping to get you there for Friday's show. You're coming down. You did successfully make that bet that the Eagles were going to be in the Super Bowl. How much chest puffing do you feel about that?
Look, anybody can book their New Orleans trip after you beat Washington in the NFC Championship game, right? But I booked everything after beating Washington in Week 11, right? That's
when you booked it? Okay.
I was like, come on, like this is going to be. This is going to be another one of those years where we're going to be there. So yeah,
you think that's impressive? Zach booked his hotel in July.
Well, okay, it would be fun to get to go no matter what. But yeah, can't wait. We'll be staying uptown at an Airbnb. Yeah, me and Feldman. So hopefully this time we'll get it done. Now we are watching games together in person, 0-2 against Mahomes. Now, that's not as bad as Fangio's record against Mahomes, but yeah, those are the the best offensive performance in NFL history, Mahomes against Gannon at the Link in 21
against the Eagles defense.
Feldman and I were at that, and then of course the Super Bowl last time. So we got to get our revenge.
But Zach has been in attendance when the Eagles beat Mahomes.
I was. I mean, barely. I was dying that night. But,
That's right.
But what was the story? This was in Kansas City?
Yeah, Kansas City last year. I had pneumonia, and I did not know it. And I mean, it was the worst I've felt. And I tried, but I do remember vividly being there. I remember after the game, Fletcher Cox was wearing a PHLY hoodie. And he said, Zach, check it out. And I remember Nick Sirianni coming off the field and screaming toward Elliott Shore Parks, like, best coach and quarterback. And I think the Chiefs won that one. I think the Chiefs had the last laugh on that one last year.
It's also like the only like very normal and obviously correct take that he's ever had. So it's very
I'll defend Elliott. Elliott's the man.
No, I mean, I'm an ESP fan for what he does. He's very good.
Okay, so let's get into it. You think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tail of the tape here. Maybe in your mind, the three-peat Mahomes and Andy Reid aura is carrying a lot of weight in the line for this game.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think we would all agree that if you just looked at the way these two teams have played this season, and even if you looked at their rosters, right? If you looked at performance on the field, like what you'd think the performance would be given what the rosters are, any of those things, I think the Eagles would be pretty clear favorites in the game. I mean, when you look at things like DVOA and point differential and all these things that are more predictive of outcomes than just pure record, the Chiefs have been beating bad teams at the buzzer like all season. You know what I mean? Like blocking a field goal, just barely beating Carolina, whatever. Like just throughout the season, it seems like that's how they've been. And I think a lot of what goes into the way people are betting on the game is just they've seen Mahomes and Andy win so many times, and they've seen them just come up with cool plays and, in big moments. And I just think, I understand that, like that, I get that. But I also think that this is more similar to the Eagles playing in the Super Bowl in 2017 than it is in 2022. In that in 2017, I thought it was also pretty clear the Eagles had the better team when you looked at like the offensive line, the defensive line, a lot of places where the game would be decided. But it was Brady and Belichick, and how can you bet against them? And they've won so many Super Bowls, and like a lot of I feel a lot of the same things. Yeah, just watching their film, looking at their numbers, like looking at all these things. Like this is not the 2022 Chiefs. Like it is that 2022 Chiefs team, and we'll get into the different sides. Well,
what are the biggest differences
I mean, the big difference is that offense was like the best offense we've seen in the NFL in the last 5 years. Like of any team in the last 5 years, if you look at EPA per drive, like that 2022 Chiefs team is number one out of
because of Sky Moore.
Sky.
That was a joke.
The corn dog motion play. 160. That's 160 offenses. That they were the best out of those 160. Like in the last 5 years. This offense is. I mean, if you look at it by DVOA, they're 8th. If you look at it by EPA per drive, they're like 13th or something. Middle of the road the whole season. When you look at on a game by game basis, you're like, well, are they taking games off and then they have good games? Like, no. I mean, if you rank the Chiefs' offense's games this year with the 2022 Chiefs, just by EPA per drive, just rank all those games, playoffs and regular season. Only one of the Chiefs' games this year breaks the top 10. So the second best Chiefs game this year was worse than the 9th best game that they played, like the average game that they played that year. Their only good game really on offense all year was against the Panthers, and that was like the worst defense in the league, and they almost lost the game anyway, like because their defense was bad. In any case, like the point is that when you compare the two teams, game by game basis, if you look at like the 11 best games these two teams have played, the Eagles have played 9 of the 11. Like that's like combining both sides of the ball into like just net EPA per drive. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just not scared by anything they've done this year. And of course, you're all probably listening saying like they take the regular season off and they turn it on for the playoffs. Well, they haven't really yet. You know what I mean? Like the very mediocre performance against the Texans on both sides of the ball by most metrics. The Texans kind of killed themselves in some ways, and random special teams plays, things like that. And then you look at this last game, they weren't good on defense. I mean, they were, Buffalo was driving up and down the field. Like, they didn't have that good a game. They had some key stops at some key moments, maybe a little bit of help from the refs as well. And then on offense, we'll get into it, but I thought they picked on just an absolutely brain dead defensive approach from Buffalo. Like, I did not understand what Buffalo was doing. Like, they were playing press man the whole time. It was like very obvious that they were in man. They weren't disguising anything. And Andy just brought out all the man beaters and it worked. So nothing they've done this year is convincing me that they've turned it on for the playoffs. So if they've done that in the past, maybe. But what kind of sample sizes are we talking about? And how many close wins have they had in these playoffs where the myth would have been debunked by any random bounce in one of a bunch of different games, like 13 seconds left against the Bills and they come back and win. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many games where it was basically a coin flip and they've won a series of coin flips. And I've been trained to think that
classic,
coin flips are
man of science, man of faith, Zach. Yeah. How do you feel about the mystique here?
I'm not a big mystique or destiny guy. That's to me. Then I don't buy into those words. But I am of the ilk of what Professor Selman was saying, and I was discussing it this morning with Anthony. Is I view comparisons to 2018, like this time, 2017 season, 2018 Super Bowl.
That's all 2017. Yeah, okay. We've had this argument before. Yeah. That's all this time. Yeah,
February. However
this
you want
is
to
the 2024 season.
Okay, so this week going into that Super Bowl, the bye week, I'm like, you know what? The Eagles are the better team, but it's Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. It's Brady and Belichick. And I was saying that, and then I remember Thursday I was doing the show, Philly Sports Talk, in the Mall of America, and I'm there with Barkan and Dan Orlovsky, and it's coming up to my prediction, and I say, you know what? For the past 10 days. I've been saying Brady and Belichick. And then I look at this game and everything I think about football. The Eagles are better on both lines of scrimmage. The Eagles have the better overall roster. Like, I know the Eagles are underdogs, but I think they're the better football team. And so I got to pick the Eagles here. I don't want to pander, but I think they're the better team. And that's kind of the way I feel here. I think the Eagles are the better team. But I think Kansas City has Patrick Mahomes. There's a reason why he's always in the winner's circle. It's like facing Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan, it was hard to knock off in the finals. And so Mahomes has lost once, and because that offensive line wasn't good enough. And this offensive line, I think the lines scrimmage, the Eagles are better. No doubt. But there's to me, it's not the mystique. It's Patrick Mahomes is that good, and that position is that important. And Patrick Mahomes would worry the heck out of me if I were the Eagles.
I mean, yeah,
no
sure,
of
course.
Yeah. All right, let's start with the Eagles offense, because now I think you can say, you want to talk about small sample sizes where everybody's riding high on the offensive performance and the passing performance of the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It's a bit of recency bias, right?
Sure,
you zoom out.
Of course.
They've been riding the offense that you hate so much all season long.
Oh, this was beautiful. It was so great. This was not the offense that I've been saying can be better. This was that version of the offense.
And I do think that, like, obviously Patrick Mahomes you worry about, but I don't expect that the Chiefs are going to put up 45 points on this defense. They're too good. But I also don't expect that this defense can just shut down Patrick Mahomes and the offense. I think this game does, to me, ride on the performance of the Eagles offense against the Chiefs defense. So what was the most important thing that you saw them do in the NFC Championship game that heartened you?
I mean, I just really liked that against a team that was very clearly trying to sell out against the run, putting 6 guys on the line of scrimmage a lot. Like, Frankie Louvu was basically living on the line of scrimmage the whole game. I mean, they were playing in a way where they were clearly just trying to stop the run. That even though the first play was a great, like, crack toss play to get around that kind of line, and then some terrible tackling at the end of it. Saquon made an awesome move at one point, but, like, despite that, I mean, Saquon's obviously awesome when it's him against the safety at the end. We know that. When that happened, my first thought was, like, that was awesome. I'm worried now we're going to see, like, 12 failed runs. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that after this, it's going to be, like, run into a 6-man box, and it's going to get, like, 2 yards. But You look at the notes here. I'm just looking at this. Like 8 of the next 11 called plays were passes. Like, and I was so proud of that. I was like, yes, like this is exactly what you need to do against this. And it was taking advantage of the way that they were playing the run. So you see play action, right? We saw play action in this game in multiple ways. There were 2 times when they ran the same play. It was a counter action rollout from shotgun. And I was like, that's perfect. Like, we call for under center play action, but like if you're not going to have that many under center runs, like that doesn't work as well. If you're running this kind of counter read like type play, why not have play action off of that? And they did that.
The marriage of the pass and the run.
Exactly.
Yes.
The thing that Kellen says every Tuesday and like basically is never done. And here finally we saw it. Like there were 2 to AJ on the same play, and they both worked. There was an ISO lead action play, which they hadn't done all season. I think that's the one that AJ Brown said he missed the call, by the way, because it looked like a shot play for him. I'm not sure if that's what you got out of
the fake bubble or that.
It was an ISO lead where Grant Calcaterra goes in, and then he and Saquon both ran like kind of fake routes, and the only real route on the play was AJ, but AJ stopped.
Well,
like, it looked like a stutter
I was
go,
listening
and he
back,
just
and
stopped.
he might have been talking about the Super Bowl
from
Kansas City. He said there was a 3 and out on the possession.
Yeah, I watched all 6 plays from the Super Bowl of the 2 3 and outs, and it wasn't one of those. It just couldn't have been based on like the way that what he was doing on the play. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on that. After that AJ presser, I was like, all right, I have a lot of work to do.
I cover this.
I broke I looked at every single one. Either he's wrong that it was a 3 and out. It might have been before one of the field goals or something. But I looked at one of those too. I don't know. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a play where it looked like everyone else was doing something and AJ was supposed to do something else. So because it was like predetermined RPO the other way and stuff on a lot of those, So it couldn't have been that he did something wrong. But I don't know. In any case, going back to this last game, there was an example where Washington disguised cover 2. One of the things that we've talked all year about how Jalen Hurts like hasn't hit the turkey hole against that, and 2 times in this game against disguised cover 2, he hit the turkey hole. There was a 15-yarder to AJ, which was like perfect. I just thought it was just enough of a mix of run, RPO, play action, and other kinds of passes to keep Washington off balance the whole game. I thought it was awesome. And even when they repeated plays, I thought it worked well in this one. We talked about how they run the same play over and over. There were a bunch of things like that counter action play. There were a couple of other plays in this game that they ran a few times. Oh, the Goedert end around was awesome. The little jet flip to DeVonta Smith, like they hadn't done that all year. They did that last year a few times, but they hadn't done it this year. And then just bringing back the slide RPO to Dallas Goedert, where he goes like behind the line of scrimmage, and then the curl flat RPO, which was like the entire offense in 2021. Just like bringing that back and being like, Jalen's good at this. Like he knows how to read this play out. He knows how to make decisions on it. They ran that 3 times. 2 of them went to Goedert, and then the third one was a handoff that went for a successful run because they were actually playing the pass on that one.
Doesn't that remind you of 2017, where it was like the switch that was flipped was, you know what we did? We went back and watched all the stuff that Nick was good at, and we put that in the offense.
Yeah, they had an excuse. It was a change of quarterback.
I know, like,
this
like,
just
why
forgot.
don't we just do that?
Yeah.
Well, this was called the straight jacket. That's what it was. They had the straight jacket offense and the straight jacket off offense.
What'd you think about that? Not what Jalen said, but maybe I should ask it a different way. Do you think the straight jacket will stay off for this game?
Good question. Yes. Now, I think the purpose of the straight jacket won't stay off. Like I think they'll say, don't give them any possessions. Don't turn this is going to be a possession football game. Don't turn the ball over. I think that's going to be an emphasis. But I think there will be, look, if you have A.J. Brown man-to-man on 4th and 5, go deep, right? So I think you'll see that element of it. So I think it'll be kind of a combination. And what I made of it, I thought Bo put it as well as anyone I've heard during the past week on Shield Show when he was saying that, or I should say Philly Special because it's not just Shield Show. But when it's like the joke that has truth to it. It's like you use humor to kind of get your point across about and so I think I don't think that was just a tongue in cheek comment. I think that was That was said with intention.
Because it came out of nowhere. It was
exactly.
I mean, it was just completely, he wanted to say it.
Exactly. It's like, I'm going to praise Nick Sirianni by saying he took the straight jacket off me. Like, Nick's done a great, whenever he's asked to say something nice about Nick Sirianni, he has to like say something that's going to be interpreted.
Moments,
it's going to be interpreted in this cycle.
It was very funny. It was completely against the grain of the rest of the presser. Like it was, everything was so positive, and it was.
Now, as we are talking, there are continued reports that the Saints they have a meeting set with Kellen Moore for after the Super Bowl. Essentially, like everybody's like, all signs are pointing to he's going to be the next head coach. It seems like a fait accompli. I know that bothers you a little bit.
First of all, what's with Kellen Moore only talking to the Saints when he's allowed to? I mean, what a nerd, I've been trying really hard since I made the analogy to ignore how correct it would turn out if this is the analogy I made between the 2022 Eagles defense and the 2024 Eagles offense, and how both of the coordinators have been criticized, I think fairly, and now we're talking about both of them.
Played a schedule of particularly weak opponents on their opposite side of the ball.
Right. Yeah. Right. The raw numbers look good, but like when you look at who they've played, and then you worry about what's going to happen when they play a good team. Now, there are a couple of important differences, which I'll get to, but it is really hard to ignore that. Even the very good performance in the NFC Championship game is somewhat similar. Now, Gannon was benefited from the quarterback injuries and all that, but still, I mean, it's kind of similar thing. I think the biggest difference between the two is that, first of all, this offense is talented enough that, not that defense wasn't, but like it's talented enough that like I don't think Moore has to be like a scheme master or anything, right? Like in this game. I think the threshold he has to reach for like, oh, Kellen Moore had a great game is a bit lower than the one we thought that Gannon had to have against that historically good 2022 Chiefs offense, right? There's a difference there. Now, in hindsight, the way Jalen Hurts played in that game, it turned out Gannon didn't have to be that great. He just had to be not historically horrendous, and he failed. So, it's just worth remembering that. But that's making me feel a little bit better about the analogy. Okay. But yes, of course, it's crazy that he might stay there and become the head coach in the city where the Super Bowl is. And
I just want to give a quick plug here real quick. If you didn't get to hear Mike Garafolo today on Anthony's show, you should check that out because he had really good insight on the Kellen Moore situation, on Kevin Patullo in particular, on why Kevin Patullo is a candidate to watch, and some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. And then one thing that probably doesn't get enough attention, which is there's a lot of questions like, is the coordinator distracted, that kind of thing. But what people don't think about is the position coaches, because Mike was saying he has coaches calling him up, being like, should I take this job? If he goes there, should I follow him? Should I, what's kind of the best path? And position coaches, more than anything, they're like all of us, right? When there's a job, they're connecting dots, and they want to know their future. And if there's a new offensive coordinator, how does that affect me? And if Kellen Moore's putting his staff together, am I better positioned going to New Orleans with a new staff or progressing through here? Like, that's very real stuff, and it's probably not thought of as much as, is the coordinator distracted?
Yeah, but the point of that is that's a tangible distraction for the coordinator, because he has to put that theoretical staff together.
That's a good point.
It's not even the brain space of, oh, what if I become a head coach? Like, what would I do? He has to actually spend some time doing that.
Exactly, and that's one thing Mike was saying. Like Gannon was putting a staff together, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution to this problem is, right? You can't just say no one do anything until after the Super Bowl.
So actually, Mike's solution was the opposite. Like, be transparent. So be like this guy's the coach,
Yeah.
And don't
that
make
would
it
be
such
less
a
of a
secret.
distraction. Yeah.
Exactly.
And we'll do his introductory press conference in 2 weeks.
Yes. This guy's the coach. And then, by the way, the GM there can start putting stuff together,
right.
or there can be, or there can be a staff in place, that kind of thing. And the guy can just focus on coaching the team. That happens in college football all the time. Actually, when the Eagles lost to the Patriots back in the 2004 Super Bowl, Charlie Weiss had already been hired by Notre Dame and finished coaching with the Patriots.
All right. Much more to get to, but time to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. One of the highlights of the week for me was our discussion about Brandon Graham's recovery. And who did we lean on? We leaned on the experts at Rothman, because at Rothman, they have an expert for everything. We're talking hip, knee, spine, shoulder and elbow, foot and ankle, hand and wrist, sports medicine, physical medicine and rehabilitation, orthopedic oncology, and trauma and fracture care. They're over 200 fellowship-trained physicians subspecialize in specific areas of the body, and that's why you trust the experts. Patients at Rothman will find the full spectrum of orthopedic care at Rothman Orthopedics. From diagnosis to discharge, they provide their patients with every service and procedure necessary, such as x-rays, orthotics and bracing, MRIs, physical therapy, and more. It's not just the volume, and that volume is high, over 250,000 of new patients and consults that Rothman is most proud of. Instead, no, it's their commitment to improving each of those patients' lives through their service and care. For more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of our patients. Rothman Orthopedics, specialized in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. That's ROTHMANORTHO.com/PHLY.
This has not been an ordinary day because before I came on here, I did an interview actually with Terrell Davis, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Super Bowl MVP, NFL MVP, and he was talking about a lot of things on behalf of Bet365. And the great thing is with Bet365, it's never ordinary. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. They live stream 780,000 events each year. They have early payout offers across NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. Bet365 pioneer live in-game betting, and today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. With Bet365, obviously, the Super Bowl's coming up. There's so many good, interesting player props. I spoke to Terrell Davis about the Saquon Barkley player props, so you can check that out on Bet365. Open your account, win or lose. Breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, total, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older, physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
So, Deniz, I think one of the reasons to be concerned for the Eagles on this side of the matchup is that Spags is a bit of a boogeyman, right? And the things that he might do to confuse the Eagles at the line of scrimmage. As a refresher, how did Spags approach that against the Eagles in the Super Bowl and in the game last year?
Yeah, when you just count like man zone and you count how many times he blitzed, I mean, nothing really sticks out. I mean, it was 28% man in the Super Bowl, 27% in the game last year. Those are around what they normally play. In terms of blitzing, it was either, if you count like exchange pressures as well, it was around 38% in the Super Bowl. It was 57% in the game last year.
Now, what's another word for an exchange pressure, potentially?
Oh, maybe it's like a abbreviated term for simulated. Like, could you do one of those?
I have heard that before.
What do you think? Okay.
Yeah. If you want to sound smart at your Super Bowl party, talk about sim pressure.
Sim pressure. I hear that's going to be
what it is. It's
going to be the talking point.
It's
what
a
is
simulated. It's a simulated blitz. So really, they're rushing four, but it's not the four guys you think are rushing.
Is that what it is?
Is that not what it is?
No, that is. No, I'm just saying. I was doing practice for the party conversation.
Oh, yeah. You say, and you know what? Jalen has struggled with this in the past. If you think about the Kansas City game last year, they really hit him with sim pressure.
Yeah, the Eagles did have a lot of trouble picking up. They had 6 sim pressures in that game. 11. They had 7 exchanges in total. One was actually a blitz and a sim pressure at the same time. What do you call that? When they blitz 2 guys and drop 1. what do you call that? That's the next level party question.
What do you call that?
I don't know.
sack.
I mean, I don't know. I call it a
I call
it a blitz exchange, but I don't know. I don't know what it's actually called. Now, Dallas Goedert didn't play that game, so I think we can just throw that one out.
No.
You know, the
No
Eagles spent like a comical amount of that game in 10 personnel with like Julio Jones in the tight end role. So it was not a good offensive performance.
Worst things in the world than having Julio on the field.
Yeah, no wonder Julio Jones got pneumonia a week later.
Oh man,
I see what you did there.
it's good. Yeah, so it's not that though with Spags.
It
Right?
wasn't contagious. I just want to say that.
For me, the thing that sticks out to when you chart like a game by Spags, two things stick out. One, the variety of the coverages, right? So you can say, okay, well, they played cover one. But when you watch when you watch like a normal defensive coordinator play cover one, it's like the same kind of cover one every time. You can tell it's like what the Bills did last week against the Chiefs. It's like there's a single high safety, and then there's like a linebacker in the hole, and then the other 5 guys are man-to-man. Spags isn't like that. Like he'll play one snap like that the whole game. He'll use a guy as a spy. He'll do robber. He'll drop 8 and have an extra guy. You know, they'll play 2-man and play man that way. I mean, they just have so many different ways of getting to the same coverages. And the same is true when they play cover 3. Like sometimes they'll rotate into cover 3. Sometimes it'll just be, you know, you can tell who the post safety is. They'll play cover 3 that way. They'll blitz in cover 3. They'll do the exchange. They spin into like some exotic version of cover 6 that I've never seen before, you know, which, like they did in this last game against the Bills. So they just have so many different looks. And famously, he brings out some of the most exotic stuff at the most important moment. And I keep coming back to this play from last year's Super Bowl when they played against the 49ers. Biggest play of the year. It's 3rd and 5. The 49ers have the ball. It's regulation. If they convert a first down, they're going to be able to bleed the clock down and kick the field goal to win the game. 3rd and 5, Shanahan calls like the most vanilla play ever, just 2 slants with no motion. They have Kittle in to protect. And Spags comes out with, first of all, the guys on the field are insane. They have 2 defensive linemen on the field. Chris Jones, George Karlaftis are the only defensive linemen on the field. He's got 2 safeties, 2 linebackers, 3 corners, 4 safeties. And he sends a 6-man pressure where he brings McDuffie from one side. He brings one of the safeties from the other side. He brings both linebackers up the middle. 49ers are totally confused. They're blocking 3 guys with 4 guys on one side, and then they're blocking 3 guys with 2 guys on the other. McDuffie comes in clean. Purdy has to throw it away, and the game ends up going to overtime for that reason. I thought that was such a moment of like, when it matters most, what do you bring to the table?
Yes.
And Shanahan has all these fancy, cool things that he does, and but he's scared to bring it at that moment. He calls like the most vanilla play ever, and Spags comes out with like a completely insane personnel grouping, play call, like everything. And we saw the same thing against the Bills last week on the 4th down where he sends the corner, McDuffie again. So I just think like you're going to get that. And it still haunts me that Kelce called the wrong protection on that 3rd and 3 before the famous 4th and 3 punt. Like that sequence, like I'm not okay. Like I'm not a
we know that. Yeah.
I'm not a stable person. But that 2nd and 5, all curls, Zach Pascal 2-yard completion that wasn't designed to get a first down. I didn't understand that. And then the 3rd and 3, they mess up the protection call because Spags sent McDuffie from one side and gave from the other. Kelce was on the radio yesterday and he said, I overthought it. And the reason he overthought it is because they've been sending blitzes from so many different places before that it was very obvious that Willie Gay was going to blitz. But Kelce somehow was like preoccupied by what if Nick Bolton comes up the middle on this or whatever. And so Goedert was standing right in front of Willie Gay, but he made the protection so that Goedert actually blocked the other way. So he and Kenny Gainwell were both blocking to one side. I didn't watch this like 20 times last night. Don't worry.
This is why you're the best.
I'm fine.
This is why you're the best.
I'll be fine.
I'm surprised that came up.
What
was this when he was talking about it?
They were talking about Spags with Kelce on WIP, and he was talking about how like that sequence that he and Nick, actually I was going to ask you guys what you thought about this. He said that when he and Nick talked about that, they both had regrets about that sequence. And he said that Nick told him in private that he kind of wishes he had gone for it on the 4th and 3. So, you know, I don't know. I don't think he said that publicly.
No, Bo did you ask him on or?
I'm not allowed to say.
Okay. I got you.
All right. That's yeah. But I got you.
Okay.
But well, 2 things. Let's go to Nick first because I think that's a major question in this game. If this is a tight game, is Nick going to turn the dial of aggressiveness?
Yeah.
And most of the season, I would have said, no, I don't think that's what he wants to do. But we saw it last week, that the 4th and 5, that was a big departure for him. I wonder if the Jake Elliott stuff plays into it enough to matter. But I don't know if it's 4th and 3 at the 40, their own 40, if Nick is going to feel emboldened to go for that. I think maybe later in the game, he would. But I think it's a huge factor in this game.
Yeah, so I think later in the game he would be more emboldened. This isn't informed saying this. This is just my speculation. If the Eagles have a lead with like 7 minutes to go, okay, I think you're going to see them like do everything they can to have one of those drives where if that includes going for 4th downs, I think it will be 4-down football. I think they'll do everything they can to finish the game with the ball or make it a 2-possession game. I think one of their things with this game is don't give Patrick Mahomes a chance to win the game. Like whatever if you miss it on 4th down, so be it, but don't give Patrick Mahomes a chance to go downfield and win the game or have the ball last. Like I don't, and it reminds, it's going to be like Jim Schwartz, where Jim Schwartz is like,
one way or the other, you're getting the ball back.
One way or the other, you're getting the ball back. I think that my guess is that might come from Howie, or Jeffrey, like whatever you do.
Oh, interesting.
Because if you remember, what was the one, Jeffrey, he said this publicly at the owners' meetings after the Super Bowl. He wishes Jalen had a chance to have them, and like I think whatever it is, it's going to be like.
And that honestly, I mean, I don't want to just relitigate Jonathan Gannon, but that was to me the biggest mark against Gannon was the way he played that last drive. Like giving up a touchdown is not the worst thing.
Yeah. I mean, relitigating that Super Bowl is a painful process, but like I didn't think that we'd have to do this, but like now that we have the rematch so soon, it's really hard not to think about two things about Jim Schwartz, right? One, he told Doug he was going to get him the ball back no matter what, whereas Gannon let the Chiefs bleed out the clock. The other is the one time Schwartz had to call a game on a field where his pass rush couldn't get there was at Wembley against the Jaguars. I don't know if you guys remember, like that was a terrible field as well, and the defensive line couldn't rush. And so what did he do? He blitzed more than he ever had as the Eagles defensive coordinator. He said, look, my pass rush isn't getting there, so we're going to change the game plan. And obviously Gannon didn't do that either.
But
I apologize. It did not even cross my mind that Bo Jackson is wearing a Kansas City Royals.
But you're talking about Spags. Like when I've watched Spags historically, and then when I watched some of their stuff this week to refamiliarize myself, the thing that comes in, and this is an obvious statement, but the thing that comes to mind is like if you're of our age or around our age and you grew up watching Eagles football, this is what it looked like. Every 3rd down, Jim Johnson would just throw exotic pressures, and the Eagles haven't really had that type of approach since 2013. Really is where you knew 3rd down they were dialing it up, and I kind of like that. Like I like making them feel uncomfortable. That's it's of Spags. It is, you see the Jim Johnson influence with the way he calls the game.
Well, that's the second thing here, and as we hear you talk about the biggest moments of the game and all of those things that Spags is going to send to confuse the offense. To me, if I'm thinking of it from the Eagles coaching standpoint, the best way to solve that problem is to not drop back, right? Is to just run the ball down their throat. And so I know that that's not necessarily what you want to see, but I think they may view this as a game where maybe we can just run the ball down their throat so much that we're not going to get behind the sticks in those 3rd and long situations and give Spags the chance to make us wrong.
Maybe. Now, empirically, the way teams get behind the sticks is by running it too much, right? And so, I know you're not a fan of running it on 2nd and 10. So this is a very interesting question. Will Spags sell out against the run the way the Rams and Commanders did?
Okay.
Right? Because when you look at the Rams game, of course, like Saquon had the big run at the end, but the Eagles were 3 for 15, I think, in success rate running the ball in the second half. And that's because the Rams were throwing an extra safety into the box, like blitzing an extra guy. They were just doing everything they could. And it was played in a blizzard, so it was a little bit, with a caveat. But it was like a very high variance run game for the Eagles, right? It was like, if you can get past that first level, it's going to be a home run. But there's also going to be a lot of unsuccessful runs. Now, does Spags want to play that game? Or is he going to play a game where he's inviting those 3-yard runs, 4-yard runs? Let's just stop them normally, and then they'll have a holding penalty at some point.
Yeah.
It'll get to 3rd and 5 at some point, and I can bring out my exotic blitz. So I'm very curious. I think Spags is thinking really
What's your guess?
long and hard about this. I don't think he's gonna do what the Rams and Commanders did. I don't think he's gonna do that kind of thing where it's like, I'm gonna like, maximize the chance of getting like a TFL on a Saquon run. Because that's exactly how teams have allowed the long runs.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look at those long runs, they're mostly on blitzes or 6-man lines or stack boxes.
And that is the approach of a defense that doesn't trust itself to hold up the whole drive, right? And
I think that's right.
Whereas with Spags, I think he does, and so I think you're probably right that he would be more willing to force the Eagles to play the matriculate the ball downfield game.
Yeah, I think that's right. Nate Tice was saying on he was on Chris Long's podcast in an interview with Bo Allen, and he was saying that the Chiefs have been a little bit better against the run than the numbers make it look this year, because most of the runs that they've allowed have been against 2-back runs, where they played they played the Ravens and the Bills and they used fullbacks, and the Eagles don't do a whole lot of that. I don't think it's going to be a big Kari Blessing game. He's played no more than I think 2 snaps in any game, so.
It's always funny. It's whenever he's in the. I feel like with the meme or whatever, the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm like, there's Blossom game. He's in the game.
There you go. He's in the game. I saw CJ Uzoma at Wanamaker's last week.
Right after our show.
Yeah, right after the show. I was walking through Wanamaker's, which is tragically closing. And he
didn't
CJ
tell you that he was
Uzoma,
about to get his practice window activated?
Yeah, he looked right at me, but he didn't feel the need to talk to me. Probably because he has no idea who I am. But yeah, he was blowout sale.
Right, so
I understand why he's there.
CJ Uzama among the candidates for that really drunk guy at halftime.
I actually have a different. I think the Eagles are going to be unafraid of getting into 3rd down here, like I actually think their worry here will be getting in 3rd and longs. I think they're going to want to live in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 in this game.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant they wouldn't want to have these long drives.
No, I think they don't want to have 3rd and longs.
Oh yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I think you're going to see more early down running than I think you're going to see fewer shots on early downs than maybe the numbers might bear out, because I think they're going to do everything they can to mitigate putting Jalen in a spot where the blitz is coming at him on 3rd and 10, and he has to put the ball up for grabs.
It's been a weird year for the Chiefs. They're actually 10th this season at getting to 3rd down, my favorite stat, and 23rd at getting to 4th down.
Yeah.
So they've actually been bad on 3rd downs.
Yeah, they're 26th in the league in 3rd downs.
Right. So it's been kind of unusual that way. And I didn't do the full breakdown of like distance to go on 3rd down, but that's not like other years with Spags where they've been better on the late downs. What
are your expectations for how Kellen Moore will give Jalen Hurts answers when they do have to protect on 3rd and long?
Yeah, look, I've criticized Kellen Moore probably more than anybody, but the one thing that I'll admit that he's brought into this offense is more quick answers against the blitz, right? Yep. And going back to those blitz numbers I was sharing earlier, there were 5 0 blitzes in the Super Bowl and 4 in the game last year. So we're going to expect like multiple 0 blitzes, big blitzes from Spags in this game. And we've seen this year that Jalen's had quicker answers for those than we've seen than we saw last year, where it seems
still
like
hasn't seen a ton of those big blitzes.
Hasn't seen that many, that's true, but sometimes those exchanges can do the same thing as a big blitz because a guy's coming unblocked anyway. Like even if it's not more guys than you have to block, it's very rare in the NFL. Just so people know that there are literally more people rushing than blockers. Like that's very rare. Usually when it's an unblocked guy, it's because they mess with the protection call and there's 2 guys blocking one and then there's nobody to block another guy. So it's not just about the numbers, it's the way that it's designed and where it's coming from. I think Kellen Moore has installed more answers, and not to keep on quoting Nate Tice, but in that same interview, I thought he mentioned something very interesting. He said, "Oh yeah, that's the Scott Linehan influence," and that's who Kellen Moore came up under. They were together in Detroit and Dallas, and Scott Linehan was Nate Tice's dad's OC in Minnesota. So he's like, "Oh yeah, I know that stuff. I can I like grew up with that stuff." So some of the quick answers to the blitz is something that Kellen Moore apparently picked up from him. So that I actually am very confident that it won't be the kind of thing where Jalen's just running around like crazy, that there will be some sort of answers built in. It won't be like last year where it's like 4 verts against a 0 blitz and none of the receivers have turned around and you're like, what's he supposed to do? So
he was actually Scott Linehan was Doug Nussmeier's offensive coordinator at Idaho.
Oh wow!
If you go even far back, and that was the connection with Nussmeier and Kellen Moore.
And then Kellen Moore replaced him in Dallas as the OC, right? Like when he left.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
There you go.
Do you think there's going to be a big crowd around Siaki Ika at Media Day? He's on
because
the Chiefs.
Of the practice
he's
squad,
on the Chiefs practice squad. I believe he's the only player who's been on both of these teams this season, right? So,
I don't think.
What do you think?
No,
podium for Ika?
No, but he takes up space, right? So, but.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I really liked him.
We all take up space.
Yeah. He takes up a lot of space. He was a space-eating nose tackle at Baylor.
Okay.
Right. I liked him coming out.
We're going to take up some space in just a minute. And then we got a lot more to talk about. We haven't even touched on Patrick Mahomes and what Vic Fangio is going to do. That's coming up next. You know what? One thing you don't want in your blitz protection is a leaky pipe. Now, I don't know if Ace Hardware Home Services can help with that, but if it's a true leaky pipe in your home, well, you know that Ace Hardware Home Services can help you on that front. If it's an air conditioning issue, they got a person for that. If it's a faucet you'd said you'd fix last fall and you're getting nagged and you just don't want to do it, well, guess what? Ace Hardware Home Services has your back. From plumbing to heating and cooling, they've got trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, we're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love, from the store now to your front door. We're talking a wide range of residential maintenance, installation, and home repair services that are available to help you out. I've already told the story many times. They helped me out a couple weeks ago. We had a bit of an issue with the heater, and guess what? Bingo, bango, bongo. Same day they fixed it, we were ready to go. Thank you to Ace Hardware Home Services, and they can help you out as well. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project.
On my TV, I have automatic recording for every Shark Tank. I love watching Shark Tank, and I remember watching
that. Is a bit of information that we have not heard before. That's very interesting.
Okay, I remember watching it in 2017. And I see a product. I was like, this is interesting. And then I see the Gronkowskis come on the screen. And I'm like, oh, man, what is this? And the answer is Ice Shaker. And if you don't know what Ice Shaker is, let me tell you, it's the perfect gift for the passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you heard of Ice Shaker, perhaps you haven't. It's now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and it makes the ideal gift. It's created and used by the Gronkowski brothers. Ice Shaker is sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the bottle that you've been looking for. Go to iceshaker.com and use the code ALLCITY25 and check it out to save 25% on your order. So you must be wondering what's great about it. Well, the kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like plastic bottles do. The patented twist in the agitator that breaks up powders and is silent when you shake it instead of that annoying ball. It's third-party tested. It holds ice for 30-plus hours. And the agitator works as a strainer as well. So it makes for very solid tailgating cups to mix drinks. Order your team-branded bottle today at iceshaker.com and use the code AllCity25 for 25% off your next order. Ice Shaker, show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. Ice Shakers.
So let's flip sides of the ball. Let's talk Patrick Mahomes. And Julia, if you want to pull up the chart on the quarterbacks that I sent you before, you want to contextualize here, Professor, that Mahomes himself is also playing at a different level than he was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the quarterback performances and also just the offensive performances in general, 2022 Mahomes was off the charts. I mean, just the best quarterback performance we've seen.
And so here for the audio listeners,
years.
We've got you got EPA per dropback on the bottom, success rate on the top. Top right is as good as it gets, and Mahomes in 2022 is as good as it gets. 2024. He's looking a little bit like 2024 Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, they're literally overlapping. I mean, Jalen's looks like his head is kind of behind Mahomes' torso on the graph there. They're touching. Essentially the same EPA per dropback. Jalen's is actually a little bit higher than Mahomes this year. and about the same success rate as well. This is Jalen's best year. It might surprise some people by EPA per dropback. Part of that is maybe the low volume and, of course, the low turnovers. But the 2022 Mahomes just completely off the charts. Now, Mahomes was not that great last year either, and they won the Super Bowl anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he turned it on in the playoffs when it mattered. And so this is just as a just to kind of put the season that they've been having in context, which we can talk about the reasons they haven't been as good. Real quick, just going back to this last Eagles game with Fangio, I thought it was a really good game by the defense, given how good that Washington offense was. I think maybe it's getting a little bit underplayed how good the defense was because the offense was just so good that it didn't really matter. But if you had said before the game, like, you're going to hold them to 23 points on, the number of drives that they had, I think we would have all taken that. And we were talking about Spags coming up with timely calls at key moments to surprise the opponent. I've been very happy with Fangio, who's not necessarily known for that, to come up with really key calls at key moments in both of these last two games. Like against the Rams, I think we talked about it last week, where he had the drop 8 with 3 defensive linemen and Stafford was completely confused and threw it away. And then in this last game, 3rd and 10, I saw this from the stands and I tweeted it and I was like, I'm probably wrong, but I think this is what I saw. He comes out with cover 2, which might sound like, who cares, cover 2. Fangio never calls cover 2. Like, he just doesn't play cover 2. This was the 6th snap of cover 2 all year, according to PFF, and I watched them, and I disagree with 3 of them. I think it was actually the 3rd actual cover 2 snap
You're the
of
best,
the season.
man. That is awesome. You disagree with
I mean, it's just one of them just was
Bo's
very
never heard
clearly.
something that has made him more excited, and I disagree with PFF. So
Oh, well, yeah, there you go. And it was
Not
good
correct.
cover 2, too. The 3 guys in the middle were matching the routes, and then the outside guys. In any case, it was just clearly surprised Jaden Daniels, and he just like chucked the ball out of bounds like on a 3rd and 10. So I've been very happy with that, and it's harder to surprise Mahomes. It's harder to confuse him, but I am very happy that that we saw some of that stuff from Fangio in this game. Okay.
Zach, what do you make of Fangio 0-8 all lifetime against Patrick Mahomes?
Well, Patrick Mahomes is a really good player. That's where you start. But I think there's something to that in the sense that, look, we discussed, you can't on one hand say he's great against this McVay offense, right? And he's great against this LaFleur offense. And then
Mahomes
on the other
is his McVay,
and then on the
or is
other
his
hand,
Fangio?
like, disregard this look, Mahomes does this to a lot of teams. And when Fangio was in the in the AFC West, those Broncos teams were not as good as the Chiefs, right? So that factors into it too. It's not just, those are bad Broncos offenses. It was hard to beat the Chiefs then. There's a reason why the Chiefs have won the division the past decade. Most of those losses came when Fangio was the coach of the Broncos. But I don't dismiss that because Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, it's how we started the show. It's that combination should scare the heck out of Eagles fans.
Yeah, 2 of them came last year when he was in Miami, including in the playoffs.
The snow or the cold.
The cold game when he had like linebackers and edge rushers who he had just met like the day before the game playing for him. I mean, I don't know if you remember, they were so depleted on defense that they were signing street free agents and having them play a lot of snaps.
And those guys all hated him.
Because he was in the press box that day.
They
Right?
had just gotten there and they hated him already.
They're like, this is like, it's illegal to be outside right now. There's like a state of emergency. And Vic's up there, drinking hot chocolate.
I thought I was really hoping I'd get something out of that game. So I started watching some of the third downs and I was like, what? Is this really Fangio calling this game? And then I looked at the numbers. He blitzed on 54% of the snaps.
Wow.
Played man on 60%.
Wow.
He sent 18 cover zero blitzes in that game. And I think what it was
he just wanted to become the Eagles coordinator.
Well, he had just met these guys and he was like, I'm not going to be able to teach them my coverages. I'm just going to say, like, go get that guy, you know? Like, and
you talk about being distracted. I wonder if the Eagles already had communication with him by that point. Right?
There you go. It certainly seemed like it, right? Didn't he basically say right after the game like that he's like leaving? It actually worked at the beginning. Mahomes started 1 for 6 for 3 yards against those cover zero blitzes, and then he eventually hit some. But in any case, this is not going to be like that. I don't think we're going to see a single cover zero blitz from Fangio in this game. He's only called 1 in the last 2 months, and I don't think it'll be all that different.
And part of the reason that maybe that plays into the Eagles' hand and why Fangio won't do that is because this Chiefs offense not very explosive.
No, not at all. If you look at Mahomes's, do we have that chart with the expected completion percentage?
This is the last one I sent you, Julia.
If we look at like expected completion percentage, which is Next Gen Stats' way of measuring how likely it is for a throw to be a completion.
Shout out to Doug Analytics.
Yeah, Doug does a great job with these graphs.
What an aptonym.
Well, he's got a great website where you can kind of make the graphs yourself. Yeah, I think we've talked about that before. He was born to do this, Doug Analytics. Yeah. So you'll see Mahomes there on the bottom right of the graph, which basically means that he has very easy throws to complete, and he's not necessarily completing more than you'd expect him to. And then Jalen is on the exact opposite part of the graph. He's at the very top left, and he's lived there his whole career. It basically means he throws very difficult throws, and he completes an unusual number of them. Now, part of that, of course, is the very big difference in wide receiver talent between these two teams. We've talked about that before, but when you look at the difference between the 2022 Chiefs and the 2024 Chiefs, the run game is about the same in terms of efficiency. The pass game's the difference, right? In 2022, they were first by a mile in EPA per dropback. Like, they weren't just first. The second best team was nowhere close to them. This year, they're 10th in EPA per dropback. And if you look at the reasons, they don't really have talent at wide receiver. Rashee Rice looked like he was on his way to becoming a star, but he got injured in week 4. He's been out since then. Early in the season, they were turning it over. Mahomes, very much like Jordan Love, who on this show, I thought he and Mahomes were basically the same guy. I mean, listening to you guys, but Mahomes threw interceptions in each of the first 7 games, and then he hasn't thrown any in any of the last 8, right? So it's very similar to Love, where he was throwing interceptions early. They've been bad in the red zone this year, which is very un-Andy, right? Like, I mean, Andy's been very good at the red zone.
Good stuff.
So maybe we'll see. I know they ran that play, the direct snap to Pacheco last week was apparently from like 1960 or whatever. Andy loves that stuff. But they're 22nd in the red zone this year. They were 2nd in 2022. And then you were saying they're not explosive. They were first by a mile in big plays per game in 2022. They had 5 a game. This year they have fewer than 3 a game. They're 27th. And when you look at them throwing the ball deep, not only do they not throw the ball deep, I mean, they are 29th in deep passes per game, fewer than 3. They're also not completing them. They're 29th in completing them at 26%. They were 43% in 2022. And then this is shocking. I had to make sure I did the filter right on this. Mahomes finished the regular season with 17 straight incompletions on deep passes. The last 17 times he threw the ball 20-plus air yards in the regular season, they were all incomplete. His only completion in the playoffs on a pass like that was the absolute should-have-been interception on the wild ball he threw up to Xavier Worthy that they had to review, that went through the safety's hands. That's the only completion he has on a deep pass since week 13. So he's won for his that was it. He was due and he got that one. So he's won for his last 21. They've also had a lot of issues at left tackle. I mean, Wanye Morris had to play 10 games.
But now they have Joe Thuney.
He was terrible. And then sliding Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney, I believe, is already in the Hall of Fame. You know, they made an exception for him, and they put him in already because he's so good.
I have so many thoughts on that.
I think sliding him out to left tackle and having Mike Caliendo play left guard, that might be good for the Eagles. I mean, I kind of agree with that. You're matching Mike Caliendo up against Milton Williams in this game. I mean, are you confident enough in Trey Smith? Maybe they are. That they do with him what Atlanta did with Lindstrom and say, you block 98 and then we'll take care of the other guys. I'm very curious if they do that.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I think they probably do that.
We'll see. And they have a very good center in Creed Humphrey, right? A lot of people say he's the best center in the league. And so, he'll shore up some issues there as well. But that's been an issue for them. And so this is not the 2022 Chiefs offense is the big point to make out of all this.
And that is, to be fair, the one Super Bowl that they lost was because of it's a team. Yes. I get it, but the offensive line was the weakness, and they were clear about that. They replaced all 5 guys the next season. So if the Eagles' best hope of winning this game is dominating the lines of scrimmage.
So hold on for one sec. I just got to say thank you to everybody watching on Fast, and remind them that there's more to go on this conversation. You can check it out on allphly.com. Before you get going, Professor Zach, if you could watch Mike Caliendo do any impression, what would it be?
Well, Frank Caliendo is the one who does the impressions, not Mike Caliendo. So, honestly, I would most like Mike Caliendo to do a Mike Caliendo impression because I would like to speak to Mike Caliendo about him and his life and his football. And I'm
You're desperate to talk to him?
I'm not desperate, but if I had the opportunity,
don't you think it'd be more funny to
no,
to
if I
ask
had
him
the
to do a
opportunity
different-
to be in Mike Caliendo's company, I wouldn't be like, Mike, do Mahomes. I would want to talk to Mike about Mike.
I think Mike Mahomes is actually pretty good.
No, if I can't find a redeeming conversation piece with the starting left guard, then shame on me.
I'll be honest. I normally think that the Super Bowl opening night, media day, whatever, is kind of silly and not for me. But when Bo's on the ground there, I mean, it's a totally different game. So I can't wait for the Mike Caliendo impressions.
Well, so the opening night actually, just to give kind of people a peek behind the curtain, it's actually extraordinarily valuable for the beat reporters of the team that they're covering, because like that's when you can talk to Jeffrey Lurie. That's when you can talk, like everyone in the organization is available. So it kind of has the reputation of being, the eccentric Access Hollywood reporter.
But that's mostly the podium. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what the fans are seeing, right? Yeah. And I get that. But like for us, I don't want to say it's the most valuable night, but look, I'm looking forward to speaking to Jeffrey Lurie. That's the opportunity to speak to Jeffrey Lurie is on media night or opening night, however you want to frame it.
Right, and it's one of like 2 times you get to talk to him all year, right? Like,
not you. You can talk to Jeffrey Lurie anytime you want.
That's right.
Not
you and him are going on a road trip.
He's on the speed dial.
He's not the speed dial. No. I mean, that's unfair to my wife and my mom and my mother and my. But no, it's not. No, I can't talk to Jeffrey Lurie whenever I want. But I'm looking forward to speaking to him on Monday for sure.
Okay. You were going to talk about something.
I was going to ask you what you thought Fangio's approach would be, given that the Chiefs do like to dink and dunk. I mean, they have 30% of their attempts are behind the line of scrimmage, which is like by far the most of any team in the league. And Fangio is known as someone who is willing to give those up sometimes. We've talked about the flats and giving up the flats. I'm curious if you think he'll treat this differently, or if he's going to be just tackle those guys.
I think he's trusted the guys to tackle those guys ever since DeJean went into the lineup. Yeah. I don't know that he's going to change that. Do you?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about DeJean and how valuable he can be in a lot of ways. In a second, I had a few questions on that as well, but yeah, I agree. I don't think he's suddenly going to be like, we have to take away the screen game, so we're going to sell out against this or whatever. They've been very good against the screen game anyway.
Early on, when they really turned things around, and after the bye, and it was like, it was all it took was just putting Cooper DeJean into the lineup, and all of a sudden the defense got good. And I think like that was overstated because it was also about the rest of the guys understanding the defense and understanding the scheme. But I do think that you can make the case that like Quinyon Mitchell's been a better player and should be the defensive rookie of the year potentially. But I think the defense would be worse if you swapped in Devontae Maddox for Cooper DeJean than if you swapped in Isaiah Rodgers for Quinyon Mitchell, because I think what DeJean allows them to do is so important.
I agree. And actually, I had a conversation with someone 2 days ago when we were talking about, we'll have the entire offseason to talk about the offseason. But we were talking kind of the Eagles' future plans at corner. And I was like, Slay walks, you can put the Gene there. And the person was like, I wouldn't move the Gene at all. He's so valuable in that spot. Is that how you guys view it?
I certainly do. I think
just in base. I mean, in base, he can play out there. I mean, I think regularly he should stay there.
Washington played so many snaps of 12 personnel this last game. They played 21 personnel. They played a snap of 13 personnel. DeJean didn't leave the field for any of them, so you don't have to play base, right? And that's the thing with Fangio, and I know, Zach, you asked him about this a few weeks ago, like the advantages of being able to do some of the things you like to do.
A Professor Selman question.
With that, well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate you asking him. And he said, I mean, he didn't give that much detail, but he did say, like, it's good when you can do things without subbing. Well, that's one of the biggest differences between those first 4 weeks and later. When it was Avonte Maddox, he had to take him off the field. They were playing a lot more base, right? And now you can just leave DeJean out there. He can play as a linebacker if you need him to. He can cover the tight end if you need him to. You know what I mean? Like if they're in a big personnel grouping, you can have DeJean cover the tight end, and we have to talk about that in this game. Chiefs play a lot of 12 personnel on early downs. They have Travis Kelce. How are you going to cover him? Are you going to stay in nickel? And the answer is almost obviously yes. You know what I mean? You're going to stay in nickel. You're going to leave DeJean out there. And I think I totally agree that Maddox for DeGene is more of a downgrade than Isaiah Rodgers for Quinyon. That's nothing, Jamie. I don't want Jamie to get upset at me.
I think you can say that Quinyon Mitchell is probably a better player right now, but Cooper DeJean is a more important player for this defense.
You could also say quiet.
But we don't have to. The comparison is a thief of joy. We don't have to.
Sure, we don't have to compare, but quiet hero of the season, Isaiah Rodgers. I mean, like it seems like he's had to come in so many times. Like Slay seems to get hurt for a drive or two every game, and he comes in and they do throw at him, and he's survived it for the most part. And I don't think a lot of teams have a third outside corner who they can rely on like that. Look at what happened to Buffalo last week. As soon as that poor number 5 Khair Elam came into the game, I mean, game was over. Like when on that side of the ball at that point.
Yeah, so. I thought Vic was interesting 2 weeks ago talking about Isaiah Rodgers this season. Like if you recall during training camp, we were talking about him as a potential starter, and Vic was saying how well he was playing during camp, and then he got hurt. And Vic said he wasn't the same guy for a few weeks, which was good honesty. And then he said he's back to playing the way he was during the summer.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean,
useful on special teams too.
Yes.
Especially now that he learned the rule that you can't push the can't push the gunner into the returner.
Your own. It's just funny that like the finger was such in the way that he was playing. You wouldn't think of that as like really affected his playing style as opposed to just he couldn't catch the ball.
The time on task, right? Like
Okay.
For sure.
What else from the AFC Championship game stood out to you as like, Vic wouldn't have to do it that way, or Vic certainly wouldn't choose to do it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about the details of that specific game. It just happens to be the last one they played, and so it's the one that I watched. Yeah. But I think the parallels with the way that Fangio will play against certain things might be worth talking about. So one thing they did in that game, they used a lot more RPO than I've seen them use recently. It was a heavy RPO game. They did like some of the Dolphins stuff, like seam, wheel, flat type RPOs, and Mahomes is so good at recognizing the coverage and throwing it to the right guy. So against cover 3, he hits Juju Smith-Schuster for the seam, and I'm watching that play, and I'm like, he just ran right between the underneath defenders into a wide open space. And if this is the Eagles, that's going to be one of the underneath defenders matching him and running with him. Like they're not just going to play that kind of zone, like drop zone where that seam is going to be there. So that's not going to work. Against cover 1, they hit the wheel to Kelce, and the reason he's open is because Damar Hamlin has to cover him, and he's coming from depth. And here, I think it's worth noting that Zach Ertz had a big game against Reed Blankenship in the NFC Championship, and some of those were zone where Reed was coming down into his area. Some of them were just man coverage where he was lined up against him from the snap. This season, for the most part, when it's been man coverage, it's been CJ on the tight end and Reed in the post. And when it's zone coverage, it's usually Reed rotating down either into the flat or into that middle of field area. I'm really curious when it's Kelce, whether Vic is going to be okay with just lining Reed Blankenship up against him and covering him, or is he going to kind of just let where Kelce's lined up dictate it? Because usually Reed's to the boundary, CJ is to the field, and then they rotate down based on that.
And if it is 12, you think it'll just be DeJean?
If it's 12, I think the big question is, are they lining up the 2 wide receivers to the same side?
Yeah.
Because Vic Fangio does not ever move his outside corners to the same side of the field. He's done it 0 times this season. And so if you have 2 wide receivers on the same side, that will occupy DeJean. Like DeJean will have to be on that side. Unless you treat one of the receivers as, not as dangerous as Kelce and say, CJ, go get the receiver. Cooper DeJean, you're in charge of 87. I don't know if that makes sense. I think DeJean's size and physicality and speed combined
best matchup,
make him perfect to cover Kelce. But I don't know if like Fangio would change. Like he hasn't really done anything like that all season where he treats a tight end like a receiver and a receiver like a tight end. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Kelce had a huge game against the Fangio defense in 2020, 8 catches, 136 yards, 1 touchdown. But other than that, he wasn't like he wasn't lighting up that defense every week. Although in 19, he had 11 catches, 142 yards. So something to pay attention to for sure. I mean, Kelce's, there's a reason why he went high in that draft yesterday. Like he is a wide receiver there, and I think that's the matchup. Bo and I were exchanging notes earlier this week about some of the things we would talk about, and one of the questions I had was, did Blankenship's performance worry you going into the Kelce game?
Yeah, and I think to your point, I don't think that Vic Fangio is going to let that be the matchup that decides this game.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, watching from the stands, I was thinking like, oh, that was tough for Reed because he was coming down and rotating down, and Ertz has like he's like one of the best leverage usage, you know, tight ends in the league. But watching on the film, a couple of them were just flat out, it's clearly man coverage, and Reed's just on him the whole way, and he still got out leveraged and beat. You know, and if there's one guy who runs those kinds of leverage routes even better than Zach Ertz, it's Travis Kelce. He's probably the best in history at it. I thought it was also really funny, Zach Bond yesterday talking about Kelce out of structure when he was asked about like, and he said like they do scramble drills differently. And the follow-up was like, what do they do? And he said like, well, other teams, the receivers like kind of work across the field on the scramble drills. And Kelce just stands there, like, and like, and he's just open. And it's like he had a touchdown against the Texans where he literally like walked into the end zone, turned around, and just stood there. Like, and it's because he doesn't run to get covered like a lot of players do. You know what I mean? He can ignore the play call and be like, "There's no one right here." Like,
and
I'll
the quarterback,
right here.
He can trust that the quarterback will make that throw.
Yeah, it's like they have telepathy. It's really crazy. Now, the thing that the Bills did that I thought destroyed them in that game was they played obvious man coverage pre-snap, like totally clear, single high. And I think the Chiefs ran run plays that could beat that with the QB +1 game, and they ran a bunch of mesh, rub, like all those kinds of things. That's not going to happen to the Eagles. Like that hasn't happened to the Eagles all season. First of all, they don't play as much man. Second, when they do play man, they disguise it. They don't just have like three guys like pressed up against like a 3-man bunch. And I just don't think that a lot of the things that worked in that game are gonna work against the Eagles. Eagles have been very good against stacks and bunches this year. There was there was a play where Worthy like dove into the end zone on a flat where they had like 2 rub routes, and his guy was nowhere near him. Like there was a mesh play where the same thing happened. I just don't think that stuff's going to work. Chiefs love to go 4-by-1, which works really well against zone coverages. If you can stomach it, you can check my Twitter for a clip from the last Super Bowl where all 4 guys are wide open against who was the defense coordinator again? Jonathan Gannon. Where there's 6
my car
guys.
ride in. I
there are
heard
6 guys covering
yeah.
grass, and then there's 4 guys wide open. It was one of the most embarrassing defensive, plays you'll ever see. That stuff's not going to happen in this game. Fangio has been very good against those kinds of off-balance type stuff. So I'm relatively confident that we're not going to see that kind of Fangio being out-schemed by Andy.
Yes.
Even if he hasn't had success in his career so far. And I don't know if you guys saw like that diamond backfield stuff they were doing.
Yes.
Like they're going to have something new like that in this game, I'm sure. It won't be the same thing, but that was really cool. It was like there's 2 guys pulling for the quarterback and 2 guys pulling for the running back, and they ran one of each. And the first thing I thought about that was like, don't run that at Nolan Smith. You know what I mean? If you don't want your guard to get knocked out of the game, like don't run that at Nolan Smith, because he knocked out the Green Bay guard on a counter play. And then in this last game, he took on a block from Nick Allegretti so hard that Allegretti fell back and Nolan Smith made the tackle. And I've never seen that. Like I've never seen that guy make the tackle on that run. Like it's one thing to like blow it up and someone else comes in and makes the tackle. Nolan Smith has been a monster.
I thought you were going to give it like he hit him so hard. How hard did he hit him? Yeah, he hit him so hard that his grandparents felt it or something like that.
Oh, we got to work on that. Yeah, to work on that for next time.
Zach, you're a fan of comedy?
Yeah, I am.
Let's get to the Super Chats. Alex Nuss says, do you think the Chiefs' Super Bowl experience over the Eagles will be more or less of a factor than it was 2 years ago?
Good question. I think that, look, I mean, the Chiefs have been in this game in 5 of the last 6 years. So
ridiculous.
It's similar to when the Eagles played against the Patriots. I think that matters to an extent. I think that can be overstated. I think if look, it might be less of a big deal because these Eagles were here 2 years ago. But then again, in 2022, the Eagles had players, some leaders who were there in 2017. I think that matters more for like the league, probably for the coaches in terms of preparation, knowing what to hit on, knowing how to prepare that week. I think when you get on the field, even with all the hoopla, and I have a story up now with A.J. Brown kind of talking about how they're paid actors. It's still football. It still comes down to, running, blocking, throwing, catching, right? And so, yeah, I think it matters to an extent. I think more what matters is that, like, Patrick Mahomes, he won't be rattled if they're down. You saw that. I went back and I read my game story or the story about the game from the last Super Bowl, and I kind of led it with
Not
Eagles.
the one that Les was jealous of.
No, Les is so good in his own right. I can go on about 2017, but no, the last one when you and I worked together, and I wrote a piece basically how the Eagles were up at halftime, and at halftime, all the players were like, "It's 0-0, guys. It's 0-0." And in the Chiefs locker room, even though it was like a 2-score lead at halftime or a 2-score deficit for them, they're like, "We're fine. We're completely fine." And I remember, like a football analyst retweeted my thing, basically like, "Yeah, the Chiefs. This is how the Chiefs play. Like this doesn't matter to them." And I think, what? Who's
the football analyst?
Well, it was Arif. Yeah. Okay. Basically, he made a point, basically saying that like, it's funny how like this was made to be a big deal that they were trailing when like the Kansas City media didn't even ask about this because like they're just like, this is how the Chiefs play.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's similar. I mean, not apples for apples, but the Patriots coming back 28-3. I keep thinking about that Scott PHLY clip where the Falcons scouts or executives are in there cheering, and PHLY turns around and is like, "What are you guys doing? Tom Brady is effing Freddy Krueger. He's going to rip your heart out. It's just
He's
a matter."
doing what to Freddy Krueger?
Tom Brady is Freddy Krueger.
That's one way to make sure he doesn't come after you, I guess.
Tom Brady is Freddy Krueger. He's going to rip your heart out. It's just a matter if, we can survive long enough. And that's kind of how Mahomes is. Like, he's going to keep coming at you.
That would explain a lot about Tom Brady, actually.
I subscribed to his newsletter today. Did you?
Freddy Krueger?
No, Tom. It's free to subscribe.
Nothing's free, Zach.
What?
Yeah.
There's always an opportunity cost, a time cost.
Why would I subscribe to Tom Brady's newsletter?
I know why you would.
Why would
I?
Why? Because more information is better than less information, right?
No.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, if you have an email from Tom Brady in your inbox, you wouldn't read it?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. You're outnumbered on this one, Zach.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm fine being outnumbered on this one. Like, access to information is a wonderful thing.
We just so profoundly disagree about this. Rob says, some nuggies. Since week 11, the Chiefs are 20th in EPA against the run and 24th in rush success rate. Additionally, the Chiefs are 24th in yards per attempt allowed against the slot. What do you think?
The one thing I would do, and this is something that I've been doing in a lot of my numbers, is you probably have to take out Week 18. Week 18 was the worst performance by any NFL team this season on like both sides of the ball when they played all their backups. Like when Andy plays his backups, they lose 40-0. Like we know that from 2004 and those games here. They know how to lose. Like when they play their back, like they do not put any effort into. I don't think they game plan at all. I don't know if they have practice that week.
But do you? But on the slot, do you see that as a weakness? I mean, can we put the knob on DeVonta in the slot up again?
Yeah, I think one of the differences in the way that they play is back in 2022, Trent McDuffie was their main slot corner, and now he's on the outside, and they have Chamari Connor playing in the slot.
I like the Chamari Connor.
So maybe a little bit of a downgrade. He's kind of like a safety
trade,
hybrid. Yeah, so they will play a lot of different personnel groupings. Like they'll play dime a lot. They'll play big dime. Well, they'll bring in Jaden Hicks, the rookie, and they'll play with Hicks being low in the as an underneath receiver, so he could end up kind of on the slot receiver as well. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think DeVonta Smith, independent of who's on defense, is very valuable in the slot and probably been underused that way this season. But yeah, those are good nuggets. We didn't talk that much about the comparison between the Chiefs defense this year and last time. The aggregate numbers, they're almost the same. I mean, they were kind of middle of the road then, and they're middle of the road now. So it's almost like you have to ignore the regular season and be like, what's Spags going to come up with?
The other chart, Julia, if you want to flash it up. This is the with the Eagles and Chiefs logos. Where last year's defense was really the great Chiefs defense.
Yes, last year when the offense was struggling, the defense really carried them to that title, and that's including in the regular season. If you look at the Chiefs, so the like how high the logos are is how good the defense is. So the Eagles defense is the best this year of any of the 4 years. But if you look at the Chiefs defense, they're kind of middle of the road this year, just like they were in 22. And in total, when you look at this chart, it's kind of, maybe an optimistic way to see it is this is the best Eagles team on the chart. And you could argue it's the worst Chiefs team, right? It's the Chiefs team that neither the offense nor the defense has had that good a year.
Frank the Barber says, first live show I've caught this week. Good to see you, Frank. He says, humor me. If Juergens and Dickerson could not go for the Super Bowl, could Kelce unretire and sign with the Eagles for the Super Bowl? Is this even possible under NFL rules?
The answer is yes. And fans might remember Jeff Thomason coming off the construction site.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Because Chad Lewis got injured.
Yes, Chad Lewis got injured. Jeff Thomason came off the construction site to be a reserve tight end for the Eagles back in 2004. So it is possible.
They have his rights. He is retired on their team. Yes.
Yeah. Now, Jason Kelce is he's lost a good deal of weight.
Good for him.
And he was already undersized.
Yeah. I'll say this. Little Jason Kelce nugget, okay? No. You'll Bo likes us to keep kind of our location private here, but we are near where Jason Kelce hosts a podcast. Okay,
so much for that.
Been waiting for Bo to hook me up with tickets the whole season. Hasn't happened.
We're near. But so, anyways, I'm driving to work today, and I see people lining outside for this podcast taping. Right, hours away, and I'm thinking, like, man, I want to get to a point where we do a live show and people are waiting outside 6 hours before the taping to get in and see us. Like, talk about podcast goals. That to me is podcast, or actually, I'm not even saying podcast goals, show goals.
Okay.
Like, that is
so
show
all you
goals
have
right
to
there.
do, Zach, is become the most popular person in the city. How are you going to go about doing that?
Well,
you're going to win a Super Bowl?
I don't play football.
You're going to take your clothes off?
Definitely not that. No. Honestly, I'm just gonna keep working hard, keep growing this viewership. I think it was Real Sports, and I was watching Real Sports one time, and I watched all the Real Sports episodes, but they were interviewing a woman who swam across the English Channel, and they asked her how she did it, and she said one stroke at a time, right? And so how are we gonna do it? We're gonna do it one viewer at a time. We're gonna keep earning everyone's appreciation for the show and loyalty, and then we'll get to a point where we can be at a live place and people are going to be waiting 6 hours before to watch our show.
I don't know, Zach. I think if that's your goal, you're going to have to play the high variance game. So I think Bo's closer to the right strategy there. You got to completely change it up and do stuff that you've never done before, and hope that it goes well. It could turn to disaster, and you could just be canceled. But I'll think about different things I could do. Thank you. Brian Baker says the best podcast in Philly. I appreciate it.
And yet you don't think Brian Baker is enough.
Peter says...
You don't think that these good sickos are enough. I think you're enough. I'm happy with you guys.
Hey, you know what?
There was a live audience at Reading Terminal.
Yeah. That
was awesome.
Yeah, that was great. Now, we need to multiply that by like 1,000, But everyone watching at home right now, if you could fill an auditorium, we'd be in great shape. What? What?
I don't know.
Keep rolling here. You're the best host in the city.
We have more super chats.
Yes.
Brian, our lovely Brian, says, do you think that Hassan Reddick misses being an Eagle right now?
Yeah, I do. I think, look, sometimes you make decisions in your career. You want more money, but then you realize like the grass isn't always greener. So I think Hassan Reddick is probably regretting this right now.
I was going to ask you, Zach, Jordan Mailata was pretty explicit in saying that this year's team was closer knit than the one from 2 years ago. Do you think, I don't want you to badmouth any players from that team or anything, but what do you think the main reason is for that? That this
Good
year's
question.
team they've all been saying this.
Yeah.
But I hadn't heard somebody say
it is
closer than 2 years ago.
It is also very interesting in the context of, you think of the conversations we've had that didn't amount to anything. All the concerns entering the season about, they don't have Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox anymore. How is the locker room going to do?
Well, so I think right there is my answer to it, is that I think there was more of a split the last team between the old guys and the new, it was the holdovers that predated Nick and the players who came in with Nick. There there was more of that in the locker room. There's much less of that now. And I've heard Lane say, like, he's the old guy. Like, he's the old guy. He sits back and he definitely sees it. And I think there has been, look, Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, those guys are those guys are Eagles Hall of Famers. But I do think some of the players who've come in since then have really kind of taken control of that locker room a little bit more.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're saying there was such a division, like such a gap in ages. Maybe
I wouldn't say division. But I just think there was more of that gap, and I think that's really closed in the past 2 years.
And maybe it's empowered the younger players because they've had to step up, right?
Yeah, and I think it's been Nick's. I know this. It has been Nick's biggest focus. Like the biggest focus in the offseason was the culture. I think when he looked at last year, he saw a culture issue that needed to be rectified. And I think the biggest thing he focused on this offseason was rectifying the culture.
How do you think Jalen has played into all of this?
Great question. I think Jalen has accepted this. I think Jalen's done some things behind the scenes to be more open with his teammates. Not to say that was an issue before, but I think that Jalen's been. Look, we talked about when Malcolm left, it became Carson's team.
That's what they wanted it to be.
That's what they wanted it to be. Yeah, like I think Jalen. There's less on both sides of the ball. There's fewer of those old guys now, and Jalen can have more of the sway, if you will.
Interesting, yeah. Mailata was saying, like, we go to each other's houses for dinner more and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think Jalen's invite the team to his house kind of guy, but maybe the threshold was so low for that, right?
Yeah, unless Brandon Graham and Big Dom come over.
That's right. Grace with the super chat says, I feel good about Kellen. I feel great about the players in Vic. Are we worried about Sirianni at all, or has he been trending more positively? I think this is a you question for game management. Daniel.
Well, you were talking earlier about how you were surprised that he went for it on 4th and 5. I was too, though. Remember against Green Bay in the fourth quarter, there was a 4th and 4.
Yes.
It was kind of similar situation where it was like, is he just trying to draw them off sides?
Yeah.
And then he ended up snapping the ball, hit that slant to AJ. That was a big play in that game. So those two things from these playoffs and the fact that he's so unscientific in his in his way that he approaches things makes me think he's going to think about that last Super Bowl. He's going to equate that to this Super Bowl. And he's going to say, I'm not going to make the same mistake again.
Okay.
Right. And because the mistake he made last time was not being aggressive enough, I think that in this case, his pseudoscience is going to push him in the right direction. And he will go for it on maybe not from his own 30, whatever. Like that depends on the way the game's going.
Yeah.
But I think he'll be more likely to make the appropriate right decision this time because it bit him last time, if that makes sense.
I stand by what I said earlier. I think whether he came to that conclusion or not, I think that's going to come from above him here. I think when they meet to talk about the game, like the thing they're going to reinforce is you're our guy. Like go down swinging here. Don't go down being I shouldn't say go down swinging. Like make sure you swing that bat. Make sure that you're aggressive. I think it would really rankle Jeffrey Lurie if they lost the game being conservative. And same thing with Howie Roseman, right? I think the emphasis is going to be aggressive.
Yeah, they're probably thinking like the time we won, we threw the ball to the quarterback on 4th down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
More super chats. We appreciate that. We've got another one from Rob who says, does the Superdome fast track favor the Birds?
Well, the best play of Dallas Goedert's career was running down the left
I was thinking about that this morning.
Does it favor the Eagles?
Underrated play.
Yeah. I don't know if it favors the Eagles or not. I know like Saquon does not like playing on turf.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Saquon really does not like playing on turf. He likes playing on natural grass.
Yeah. Just the
he played on turf
body,
he played on one of the worst fields in the whole league his whole career. So.
But look, you don't have to worry about slipping in New Orleans. It's going to play true, so that might be an advantage.
This will be the second time, not that anyone asked, that I've been in that building when I go to this game. The first time it was during college. We went to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. And
As you do.
And most of the group, as we do, most of the group had left already. It was
HD over here.
Just me and my buddies, Satlin and Ben. Shout out. The three of us. Before our flight, we had like a few hours, and we were like, "Let's go to the Superdome. They have tours." Okay, this is like just like a thing you do right in college. So we did a tour, and they took us to one of the luxury boxes, and it was the first time during the tour that you could see the field. And I got really excited, and I was like, so I ran towards the field just to see it. This is like
from a luxury box?
Away from the group. Yeah, because the group was like they were showing us like where you get the champagne or whatever, and so but the field was like on the other side of the box. So it was like a big room where they have parties or whatever.
It was field level?
No, it was like upper deck luxury box kind of thing.
So I'm confused. So you're running like down the.
We hadn't seen the inside of the like we had only seen like the locker room or whatever at that point. We hadn't.
This is on a Looney Tunes thing where you're running in midair.
No,
like
I was running on like a carpet in a thing. But the reason I'm telling the story is because I was sprinting towards the field to see the field, but there was a glass wall that I didn't see.
Oh.
And I just went face first into the glass wall and literally fell backwards and like yelled out. And the guy organizing the tour was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Like, and the whole group came over to me and all that. So anyway, I hope for a better experience this time. Yeah, I won't.
I mean, I feel like you had it coming for just sprinting off.
It was weird. I mean, I don't know why I got so excited, but I was like, "Oh, I got to see the field." But
okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
one more super chat I think we have from Real Time with Prince Blue, who says, "I would wait online for the professor to do my quantitative research."
Compliment to you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. I heard someone say it does. Does your class get automatic B's this
Real
time of
with
year?
Prince Blue says, so it was like Looney Tunes.
It kind of, in the end, it was. Yes, it really was. Yeah.
Are you a more lenient grader this time of year because you have game film to break down?
This like rare overlap of like it has the Eagles basically have to get to the Super Bowl for it to be this much of an overlap. It's a little bit. It's a little bit something. But class is on Monday. We're canceled from the original syllabus because I was confident that this would happen. So that's the one leniency they get is they get the day off on Monday. And I'm not sure they all know the reason why, but this is the reason why.
Claire also with the super chat wants to speak into existence Deniz's worst nightmare. She says she can't wait for Saquon Barkley to be Super Bowl MVP.
I mean, if that means we win the game, that's fine.
Imagine that Saquon runs for 250 yards in a losing effort and he's still the MVP. That would really be your.
That would like perfectly fit my my biggest fears.
Do you know the
I'm sure a lot of fans would have a parade for that because that seems to be what they care about.
Do you know the last running back who was Super Bowl MVP?
Is it your boy? Is it Terrell Davis?
It's Terrell Davis,
Wow.
1998.
The second one?
Yeah, 1998. The last running back.
No, the first one. The first one.
First one.
Okay.
98.
Okay.
Super Bowl
That's
MVP.
interesting.
Yeah. It's been a long time.
So the first one that Elway won, he wasn't even the
It was
MVP?
on the first. It was 1998 Super Bowl, so 97 season.
Yeah,
Oh, that's the first one. Okay. See,
Yeah.
you say the season wrong.
Well, what do
Can't do that.
But it's
Who cares what year the Super Bowl was? There's a convention.
But that's when the Super Bowl's played.
Yeah, but there's a convention to remembering the
Okay.
season. The
I'm so
2018
confused about
Eagles
that.
didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but you know what my one Super Bowl take is? I am so anti-Roman numerals.
Oh, you don't like the licks?
You don't like licks?
I'm
Licks
so
is good.
anti-Roman
Oh, I
numerals.
like the licks.
Licks is really good.
You
in New
do seem
Orleans,
like a Licks guy.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You seem
no,
like a
Licks
Licks
is
guy.
good.
Yeah.
Under,
And they can also do Super Bowl X. So, like, what are your Super Bowl X?
No, yeah, I mean, just give.
For me, it's like when they're reviewing a catch. Ugh, yuck.
Do you think they're gonna stop at some point when it gets to be like LXXXVIII? Like, is
Well, I
that
just
like
don't
too
think- I
many?
just don't
They
think we'll
can
be
at this
here.
point,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Just give me the number. That's why I like Super Bowl 50. It's easy. Give me the number.
I like the Roman
Super Bowl
numerals.
50 was the
I like
last
it
Super
too.
Bowl
Yeah.
in San Francisco.
I also like that they're getting a little more creative.
Let's say next year is in Super Bowl is in San Francisco. So maybe they'll go back next year to the number.
I hope not.
No, that was a 50 thing.
This is your big take?
Oh,
That's the year that they had the 50-yard line
I
be
remember.
like a different color. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why they did that.
Just give me the number. Come on.
An impassioned plea.
Yeah. Then is there anyone in the chat who prefers the Roman numerals? Julia, what's your view? Thank you.
I have to think about it, and then I just start.
Yeah.
This one's easy. It's just licks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Should be a fun week.
Thank God. If that was me who said it, I would never hear the end of that comment. Ever.
Can't wait to see you guys down there.
If it was you who said what?
I'm not saying it. I'm look, 6 years with you. I'm not.
What did I
saying
say?
that.
I was just going to
not
say,
saying
by the
that.
way, I'm going to go down there on Friday, and I hope you guys are still on speaking terms by then after all the time you're going to spend together. But if you guys are free for dinner or something,
Oh,
it would be
yeah.
awesome
We'll
on
invite
Friday
Paul
night. Paul McCartney.
Yeah, we'll invite
exactly.
Paul McCartney this time.
Yeah. There you go. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, Feldman will be at the Super Bowl. He's going to get there Saturday night. And maybe we can have a way for people to meet him.
No, I think it's better if he's not if he's an abstraction. I think that's better.
Gotcha.
Yes. So next week we are going to be boots on the ground. All kinds of stuff headed your way. We've got our normal 2:00 shows every single day from Radio Row, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2:00. And then we're going to have some bonus shows. We're going to have a show after media night, late night on Monday night. That'll be a loopy one. And then we're also going to have shows probably about 6 p.m. Eastern time, also from Radio Row. We gather so much content. We're going to have some good interviews that we're looking forward to, maybe some old show favorites as well. And, of course, we're going to have just separate videos that go up. We're going to have social content, all kinds of stuff. It should be a boffo week for the Eagles fan.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm excited for the content from PHLY. We got a good crew going down there. As I've said before, it's a different experience covering the team you cover in the Super Bowl compared to covering the Super Bowl generally. I will say to the audience, to the viewers, the listeners, the readers, if there's anything you want from down there, if there's a story you want me to pursue, if there's an interview you want us to get, leave it in the comments. I read every comment. And I will do, we get a lot of access down there. With this job compared to past shows, on past jobs, the show is a major part of it relative to just the writing, but we'll make sure that we have every form of media covered.
And Justin under the horn, Brian says, anyone done a wellness check on James Bradbury?
Yeah, he's been in the building this week. He'll be down in New Orleans next week. I look forward to catching. I've spoken to James a few times this year. Looking forward to catching up with him down there.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Thank you to the professor. Thank you to Julia. For Zach and myself, we will talk to you on Monday, Super Bowl week, Super Bowl LIX. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.